Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chancellor Cabral, for welcoming us to this facility. I'll say a word or two about it shortly. I wanted to highlight a few of our initiatives over the past month in the areas of our strategic direction and the integrated academic and facilities plan. If you haven't caught on, that's kind of the theme of my president's reports over the past months. This month, one of our major activities, it will be kicking off with Complete College America. I think many of you are familiar with them. They're the premier organization in the country that's focused on helping advance the college completion agenda across all 50 states. We have been selected as just one of 4 states to participate in their latest initiative called GPS Direct for Guided Pathways to Success. The purpose there is their attempt to address the challenge that many college students don't graduate, and that many of those who do take longer than it should and often take excess credits above the number absolutely required for their degree, which results in significant cost to students and their families. So the goal of their GPS Direct program is to learn how to implement these guided pathways to success at scale, and that's one of Complete College America's themes, is to try to do everything at scale, to get more students onto structured degree maps, monitor their progress, and then boost completion rates. So we responded to their call for interest. I love how they phrased it. They were looking for the next wave of impatient reformers. And I was proud to join that group, and we were accepted. We will receive a small amount of financial support. We will also receive some technical assistance, and frankly, it will put some pressure on us that we sometimes don't apply to ourselves without this kind of external opportunity. I will just mention some of the things that they're focused on this time. Momentum year, that is getting students started in their first year on a path aggressively, including their gateway courses and some of the courses that will help toward their majors, helping them move forward towards selecting a major quickly. The jargon for this now is becoming purpose. So sometimes you'll see purpose first. We've also seen completion with a purpose, but the idea is to have students select majors that will help lead them into the lives that they want. For those who don't pick majors, there's a concept of meta majors. So if you don't know if you're interested in economics, sociology, or psychology, if you focus on social sciences, we can help you stay on track until you select one of those and then focus during your junior and senior years. This all requires default degree plans. We've done pretty well with that across the system so that students can stay on track, and it fits in with our STAR system to help students register, or I should say our award-winning STAR system, so that students' registration is reflected in those pathways. Proactive advising, and we'll be kicking off with our academic advisors next week. Transferability, again, we're pretty good at that relative to most states. Work on our math pathways, and this is one of those items that's been noted nationally, that while college algebra is required in many institutions across the country, I know that Regent Portnoy is very interested in polynomial factoring and logarithmic functions, but it may surprise you to know that many successful professionals don't actually use those skills.
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe.
And so the point of the looking at math pathways is to identify math pathways that are appropriate for specific majors and careers. For example, you can get through college algebra and even calculus without learning certain statistical and quantitative reasoning skills that may actually be more useful in most careers. Co-requisite remediation, which our community colleges have embraced with great success, and 15 to finish, is part of the national agenda, again, invented here in Hawaii. So this begins with our visit next week. Our technical assistance team from Complete College America will be here. We have a couple of meetings scheduled, including with our group of system-wide academic advisors and the transfer network that meets on a periodic basis. We do have strengths in many of these areas, but we also expect to be challenged in a good way across all of our campuses and across the system. I want to highlight a couple of areas of scholarship, not because these are high dollar awards, but because they're very special to the work that we do here at the University of Hawaii with and for our state. One is a project that doesn't involve funding, but it's scholarship by one of our junior faculty at UH Mānoa in CTAR. Noah Lincoln is working on a book and a website that catalogs many varieties of native sugarcane and discusses their significance. So most people in Hawaii think of sugarcane as part of the plantation economy, and we think of it, now that the plantation economy is gone, that we're done with sugarcane. But this actually turns out not to be true, and we're now going back and looking at the role of sugar pre-plantation to understand how the Hawaiians utilized sugarcane for a millennium, actually, before the Europeans arrived. It was not just used for food, but medicine, religious and ceremonies. We are also looking at its role today in traditional and modern organic farming. It turns out you can intercrop sugarcane with ulu or breadfruit, which may be one of the crops that really helps with food security here, and also cane juice quality. And I will note the very important use of sugarcane in skewers and swizzle sticks, as well as for local distillers making rum agricola, a fresh cane juice rum. So the mantra from the group in CTAR looking at this, Noah Lincoln and Ted Radovich is working with him, is sugar is not dead, just different. And we're looking at it as a high-value horticultural crop rather than a low-value agronomic or plantation crop. And again, that's the work that only the University of Hawaii can do for our state. I want to mention Albie Miles at UH West Oahu, who works in our Sustainable Community Food Systems group. He did just receive a modest grant, $400,000, so good sized, especially for UH West Oahu, for 2 years. This one is really interesting because it will help support a system-wide survey of our students on their food security. And when we talk about food security for students, we're not talking about whether or not we have food for a month in the islands in the case of a hurricane, but rather our hungry students. And this is a national problem, but students who are challenged financially often cut back on food in order to afford tuition, rent, fees, textbooks, and other essentials of life. And we're trying to understand how we can do better to grasp the scope of the problem, and then sets of solutions such as food pantries and the like on campus, and partner with community organizations such as the food bank, and also look at how we can integrate with other kinds of federal aid and state aid that may be available to needy students. And some of our campuses are doing some wonderful things, but we don't yet have our handle on this across the system. So we're very grateful for this federal support to help us get started. Finally, let me mention in this area, I don't have details, but yesterday the U.S. Department of Education announced the grants from the Native Hawaiian Education Program. So September 21st, not many days left till September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. But we were awarded 7 new grants this year for a total of about $3.9 million in Native Hawaiian education, again advancing our Hawaii Graduation Initiative and our commitment to advance Native Hawaiian student success. And we'll get details out as soon as we can collect them. This month, since we last met, the University of Hawaii, and credit to Vice President Young, who I saw wandering around in the back somewhere, we completed our annual rating surveillance with Fitch Ratings. We're very happy to say that we affirmed our revenue bond rating at AA with a stable outlook. That's no change, which is great news. And the Fitch report, which I'm sure we can share with you, perhaps alongside our next bond compliance report in the B&F committee for the fascinating reading of all of you, to see the details of the strong state funding levels, the diversification of our revenue sources. We do have a relatively low debt burden and consistent work on improving our operations were all noted by Fitch. We do maintain now just 2 ratings. Moody's we're at AA2 and Fitch still at AA. When we do move forward with our bond issuance, these really help us maintain low interest rates. I want to highlight, again, it's a small matter, but one that I think is important to Hawaii, and it talks about, it demonstrates how philanthropic funding also supports our work. I worked for a number of years in Keller Hall earlier in my career, and the senior citizen of Keller Hall was an engineering professor named Art Chu, who had been on the faculty since 1953. His daughter grew up on campus when faculty housing was in the middle of campus and Manoa was farmland. And he passed away a few years ago, and with his family and other supporters, we established and you approved the Arthur N.L. Chu Distinguished Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Art flew around to Asia. He was an expert on resilient construction practices. So he would advise Hong Kong, Singapore, and other places on how to construct to prepare for typhoons. The first recipient of the Arthur N.L. Chu, he's Art Chu to all of us, Distinguished Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering, is Ian Robertson, who is recognized nationally for his contributions to tsunami design. So buildings that are resilient to tsunamis design, hazard mitigation design, structural engineering solutions, and recognized for his excellence in teaching, research, and public service. Many of our units are strongly supported with these kinds of endowed professorships and chairs, often named for people within the university and often supported by people within the university. And we like to continue to build that tradition. This beautiful education building, and thank you, I told Manny we would be happy to meet here every month. The folks at the IT Center would be glad to share the joy. He pointed out that it will take 3 new full-time staff to support you here every month. But this is a fabulous facility. This was completed on time, on budget, and I'm happy to report that it is just being recognized hot off the press by the American Planning Association, the Hawai'i Chapter. I think Manny will have to fly to Kauai to receive the award and pay $50 to go to the dinner. But this building is being recognized for the integration of site and environmental design to create great interior spaces, thoughtful massing, and facade articulation. I feel that I often articulate a facade, but I'll leave it at that. Let me close by highlighting that this is one of our newest buildings across the system as well. You don't see as many new buildings, particularly since the moratorium came up and we began to refocus on the facilities we have. But it shouldn't escape notice that it is the education building that is located here at Leeward Community College, and this is an example of our how we are addressing the integrated academic and facilities plan. So that was intended to help us look at the challenges the state faces and how we address them as a system. The teacher shortage is certainly one of the challenges this state faces. It is particularly acute on this side of this island, although it is also a challenge in rural areas, special education, high school STEM teachers, and others. But this is a focus of our work. Starting about a year and a half ago, we began to pull together a group of our education faculty and administrators from across the system to look at how we would work together to address the teacher shortage across the state. And you have this year approved the Leeward Community College Advanced Practice Certificate, which I'm happy to report was approved last week, I think, just last week by the Hawaii, this month anyway, by the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board to provide certification for special ed teachers. So this is, well, more special ed teachers. And this is part of a system-wide pathway as well as a number of our programs. But when we were looking at the teacher shortage and the things we could do to help develop teachers from within, one of the things that we commented on was the narrative in this state has been extremely negative about the teaching profession. My personal opinion is in part that has been driven through the collective bargaining process, but it's also our retention of teachers is not particularly high. Part of that is perception of the community as well. So we within the UH system decided to launch a campaign. It's called Be a Hero, Be a Teacher. We have posters, we have multimedia, we're using social media. We sent posters out to the legislators to show what we're doing. But let me close my president's report with this 2-minute video that is an amazing piece of work. So.
Teachers, heroes, raise your fists to the sky, prepare to fly to the noosphere that knows no bounds. Nested in grounds, gardeners' shoots found roots that seep deep into earth, into the center of what matters, finding worth in the search of ideas that have shattered minds that mathematicians must mend, methodically molding mud with a meticulous madness possessed with the scientific process of understanding that which is interpreted in ways unimaginable. The impossibly intricate made incredibly tangible likenesses longing to lightly languish love in liquid and light years. It's time/space that began right here. You engineer and design. You teach students with instruction that kicks off a cacophony of caucuses. To live is to learn. This is what the art and science is. Teachers, your part is to part the sea of mediocrity so knowledge is found. Play the keys of understanding, wisdom brought down, bridging and bending a unique comprehending, lending itself to precise percussion, teaching a permanent penmanship to pupils who rush in to classes. Producing kings and queens, princes and princesses with perfect or not performances on tests to those that never rest. At nap time, it's that time to stand for leagues of justice with super friends who avenge misinformation. Educators who wander worlds for inspiration, throwing pedagogical praxis down on paper, putting lessons and lessons, speaking words profound. We seek those who would join this honorable profession. So become one. To the sky, reach. Be courageous. Be legendary. Be a hero. Teach.
And, sorry, gets me every time. Written and performed by a UH Hilo graduate. And that concludes my president's report.